your fresh and unbiased voice in American politics. Guys, welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. Today is November 3rd, the morning of the election, and I'm going to lock in my final 2020 senatorial election prediction. We're going to be taking a look at the map, filling in the map for who I think will win this each race, and most importantly, who will be taking control of the United States Senate. But before we get started, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. And also, please remember to check out our election night coverage, which will be happening tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's get started. So at this point, the Senate races, they're at a very interesting point. They've changed a lot since I did my last prediction, and certain candidates across the country have done very, very well when it comes to the last couple of days of this election. And truly, they do have the bigger chances of winning in some upset races. So to begin with, let's start by filling in the states that I think the Democrats will win by more than 15 percentage points. At this point, there's a couple of these states, but those states include Jeff Merkley in Oregon. We have in New Mexico, Ben Ray Lujan. And in places like New Mexico, in Virginia, Mark Warner, we can expect that race to go by over 15%. Then up in the northern parts, we have Jack Reed in Rhode Island, which he will probably win re-election by that margin. Massachusetts, Ed Markey, he had a contested primary. However, the actual election as a whole is probably not going to be that contested. Ed Markey's probably going to win by that margin. The state of New Jersey, at this point, Cory Booker probably has that race in the bag, over 15%. This is based on polling data. This is based on things that we've seen recently. And these are states that truly there hasn't been as much of a campaign on the other side that would also have in effect. In Delaware, if I'm correct, that's John Carney. He's going to win his Senate seat. I may be wrong on that. However, currently speaking, we have 43, including the state of Illinois. So at this point in time with Illinois, which is Dick Durbin's seat, the Democrats have 43 safe seats that are getting regardless. The competitive races, if they lose those, which would be kind of everything else on the map, it would be a 57 seat majority for the Republicans, although that's probably not going to happen. As the Republicans they do have some seats that they're going to lose that are not filled in yet. So going on to the Republican safe states, we have a couple of these. A lot of these races, they're a lot closer than it should be. Jim Risch, that race could be a lot closer. However, he has a pretty good grasp on that state. Wyoming, we have Cynthia Loomis. South Dakota, Mike Rounds getting reelected. Nebraska, we're seeing Ben Sasse getting reelected. Some of these races, it's not going to be that hard. Kansas is surprisingly, insanely close at this point in time. We're going to get into that race later. In Oklahoma, Jim Inhofe will probably end up being the winner there. It's not going to be that hard of a race. Tom Cotton in Arkansas, probably going to get reelected. Bill Cassidy in the state of Louisiana. Cindy Hyde-Smith in Mississippi. These senators are getting reelected. Well, in this case, a new senator is getting reelected here. Bill Hagerty, at this point, probably the projected winner, looking at the polls and things that we do have. We're probably going to see Bill Hagerty win here today in a very close race. Kentucky is somewhat close, but I'm not going to call that yet. West Virginia, it's going to be a very easy win for Shelley Moore Capito. And at this point in time, it's not going to be as close as some people thought this state could have gone. If Richard Ojeda was the nominee in the state of West Virginia for the Democrats, maybe we could have seen a victory for Richard Ojeda in that race, or at least a contested race. But that is currently not the case, and that's not what's going to happen. And overall, I think that is the current map in safe states for the Democrats and the Republicans. So what we're seeing from this map is there's a lot of Republican seats that are yet to fill in. And if you were to put this map, for example, states that went to Donald Trump in 2016, you would have a Republican majority outright. Now, what's happening? The Democrats are contesting some of these races, and they're very, very close. And they are truly going through and even winning in some of them in places that you wouldn't even think so. Which takes me to our contested states, which are states that are not currently filled in. And we'll probably go from anywhere from like 0% to 15%, anywhere in that margins. And then we classify those individually by likely, lean, and tilt states. We're going to focus on the likely states right now. These are states that the Democrats should be expected to win from 5 to 15%. So at this point in time, the Democrats do have a couple of these states, most notably the state of Colorado, which would be the first flip of election. They have Cory Garner, the current incumbent here, probably going to lose to the very strong Democratic challenger, John Hickenlooper. He's a former governor. He's very, very popular. He should be expecting a victory there. You also have seats like in Minnesota, Tina Smith, probably an easy ride to re-election. Same thing for Gary Peters. He had a little bit of a harder race with John James. However, the momentum is really not there for the Republicans in Michigan at the senatorial level. Take a look at New Hampshire. I mean, Shane Shaheen's seat. That's a state that currently the Republicans were somewhat eyeing. However, Jane Shaheen is just so popular in the state of New Hampshire, it's going to be somewhat hard for Biden to win there. And generally speaking, the Democrats have a pretty strong hold on the seats that they really need to defend. And pretty much after this point, the Democrats are no longer defending seats, if I'm correct. They would just be gaining, except Alabama, which I'm going to get into in just a bit. So, I mean, yeah, at this point in time, it's looking like the Democrats might be in for a very, very good night. And generally speaking, the seats I just talked about will probably go to the Democrats by around a margin of 5 to 15%. We're looking like upper section of that in Colorado, so like maybe 10%. Same thing in Minnesota, like 8%. Michigan probably going to be by 6%. New Hampshire's probably going to go by 10%. So that's currently what we're looking at the senatorial level in those races. Going on to the Republican likely states or states that they will be winning by, or I project them to win by, from 5 to 15%. You have a couple of these races, including Alaska. That's Dan Sullivan's race. You have states like Texas at this point. That's John Cornyn's race. We have a flip on their part. The state of Alabama, which at this point I can project will go to Tuberville, defeating incumbent Doug Jones. And I think also at this point in time we're looking at a tilt or a likely race in the state of South Carolina and in the state of Kentucky. We're seeing a lot of races currently that are a lot closer than like a lot of people expected to be. For example, South Carolina is one of those races. These races fall like in a big range of possibilities when it comes to how much they're going by. But I mean, as of right now, I mean, in Alaska, we're seeing Dan Sullivan win by around 8%. That's what I'm projecting. John Cornyn surprisingly has a lot of support in Texas compared to the presidential levels and what MJ Heger has. I mean, John Cornyn pretty much has he in the mainstream media and just looking at the big Senate races, Texas hasn't been that focused because it's not the excitement there was for Beto O'Rourke at the senatorial level in 2016. And at this point in time, that probably tells us that John Cornyn is going to be the winner, unless, of course, there's always room for a surprise. But at this point, this is what's going on. In the state of Alaska or Alabama, we have Tommy Tuberville. This would be a flip against Senator Doug Jones. Probably going to go by around 7%. Doug Jones is somewhat popular for a Democrat in Alabama. However, I mean, it's still the Republican identity, and he won that race because he was a flawed candidate on the other side in 2017. So at this point in time, we're looking at a race that's probably going to be going to Tommy Tuberville. In South Carolina, this race is pretty interesting and close, with Jamie Harrison like being very, very close to Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's probably going to end up winning here. It's going to be a pretty long time since until we see a Democrat in South Carolina. I think at least we're going to have to wait until 2024, if not 2028. However, here we're seeing, I mean, a very, very interesting race. And Lindsey Graham probably is going to hold on to his Senate seat. By how much is the question? We don't know. And at this point in time, it could be anywhere from 5 to maybe 10%, although Jamie Harrison has pushed down those margins. So those are the states that I think would go by likely margins on both sides of the aisle. What about the states that I believe will go anywhere from 1.5 to 5%, or the lean states? At this point, there's like a lot of these states in this election, and let's start filling them in. So right now, I think, for example, let's start off with the Democrats. Right now, the Democrats, they probably have states like Arizona with Mark Kelly going by lean margins. States like North Carolina. Although maybe I'll leave North Carolina for later. States like Maine at this point definitely are going by lean margins. And at this point, those are the two only ones for this. I mean, they have some of these states. However, a lot of these races they had in the lean margins, like North Carolina, they narrowed down at the end of the election. For example, in these two states, in Arizona and in Maine, we are looking at interesting races. And I mean, at this point, Maine, it's a very unpopular Republican incumbent in Suzanne Collins, and a very charismatic Sarah Gideon who's running against her. And we're seeing in the polls, we're seeing in a lot of the data we have, Sarah Gideon constantly be leading over Susan Collins over a lead of like 3%. So keep that in mind, as that is something that's very important. Going on to Arizona, I mean, this race started to narrow up a little bit. I mean, Martha McSally is ramping up her support in the southern part of the state. However, Mark Kelly is very popular amongst Maricopa County voters, which truly are kind of somewhat of the deciding factor in this election. So I think at this point in time, that becomes something that's crucial in the state of Arizona. And at this point in time, I mean, Martha McSally probably lost this race. She was never elected. This is a special election. She says she was appointed to that seat after the death of Senator John McCain. And at this point, she's probably going to lose her Senate seat that was given to her. So that is the state of Arizona. And generally speaking, these two are the only states that are going to be going to the Democrats by lean margins. Going on to the Republican states at this point in time, that probably will be going by a lean margin. We're looking at some of these states, for example, like the states of Georgia. I mean, there's two Senate races here with a vote of both, which I expect will go by lean margins for the Republicans. At this point in time, I mean, both of the Republican candidates, or actually three of them, because one of the races has two Republicans. We're seeing like very strong numbers there. And I mean, take a look at Doug Collins. I mean, Doug Collins and Kelly Loeffler, one of them is probably going to edge it out the victory against Raphael Warnock. That's probably how it's going to work out. And in the regular Senate election, we have David Perdue going against John Ossoff. And in that race, I mean, you could expect it to be a lot closer than that special race. However, it's probably going to be going to the Republicans by around 2 to 3%. Unless, again, the Democrats have this huge wave and they start winning in places you would have thought it was impossible. So that is currently the one state I think the Republicans are winning by lean margins in both of those races, putting the balance of power at 49 Democrats to 47 Republicans. So now, going into these last couple of races, right now, where do I see this map going in the tilt margin? Kind of the deciding factor of this race. The Democrats just need one seat if Biden wins, two if he loses, to take control of the Senate.